Okay, let's call this meeting to order. City of North Kansas City, Missouri, regular council meeting, December 3rd, 2019. Could we have a moment of silence? Caller? Approval of the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, moving on. Consent agenda?
I do have a question on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
That's okay. On the reappointments, and I want to appreciate Mr. Wes Edwin for re-upping on the board, liquor control. Did he reach out to you to be reappointed?
Yes.
Yes, he did. Okay. The reason why I ask is I've got a couple constituents that are on boards right now, and that their terms are going to be coming up pretty soon. So if they're interested in continuing on the board, would it be a good idea for them to reach out to you then?
Yes, I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we've already voted.
No, we need all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 10.
Appointment of Kevin Freeman as Chief of Police, Bill number 7470, ordinance number 9267.
Mr. Eric?
Thank you, sir. As you all know, Chief Steve Beamer is retiring as our police chief on January 10th, 2020. So we did go through a recruitment process for a new chief. Major Kevin Freeman was one of the candidates and went through a rigorous process along with a number of other very fine candidates, and was determined to be the best choice to be our next chief of police. So I'm very pleased to recommend to you the appointment of Kevin Freeman as the city's next chief of police effective January 11th, 2020.
Call for the motion.
First reading. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance appointing Kevin Freeman as Chief of Police of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, effective January 11th, 2020.
I move that bill number 7470 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9267.
Second.
Call roll.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman? Yes. Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
An ordinance appointing Kevin Freeman as Chief of Police of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, effective January 11th, 2020.
Can we ask
Speak.
our incoming chief to say a few words?
Well, at the risk of sounding like an acceptance speech, I just want to take a moment to thank Mr. Berlin, the other members of the hiring committee, mayor, city council members for this opportunity, appointing me chief of police of what I feel one of the best police departments in the area for sure. I'm humbled and I'm excited for the challenge. Additionally, I'd like to thank Chief Beamer for your mentorship and your friendship, more importantly, throughout the years. I'd be remiss also if I didn't include my family for their support and encouragement throughout my career. With me tonight is my wife Rhonda, my daughter Carly, and our son Dalton is working tonight. So thanks again, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Okay. 13?
Number 11.
11, oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
11.
Actuarial report on the Police and Fire Pension Fund, Resolution Number 19-081.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Chief Steve Beamer.
Thank you, sir. At the November 12th meeting of the Police and Fire Pension Board, we heard the actuarial report presented by Tracy Christian and McLeod and Associates for this, for the fiscal year that ended September 30th. So this is the report for the fund as it stood on October 1. I'm pleased to announce that the fund is healthy, and Ms. Christian is here to make a presentation, a brief presentation to the council about the condition of the fund. I provided all of you a document before the meeting that provides the summary that she's going to be talking about. And at the conclusion of her presentation, there is a resolution for your consideration to accept that actuarial report for fiscal year 2020. Ms. Christian?
Thank you. You gave away the punchline, though. It's good news this year. I will be brief, and I will go quickly through this summary, but I'm happy to stop at any point and answer questions. This is the summary of the report that we present every year. This is the actuarial valuation as of October 1, 2019. Two main focuses of this valuation, two main reasons that we do this every year. One is to give the board and the city an idea of the funded status of the plan. How much money do we need? How much money do we have? So we take the present value of all of the plan's currently accrued liabilities. We look at all benefits either in pay status or that have been accrued to date, and we look at the value of those benefits. And then we compare that to the assets of the plan. And as you can see down at the bottom of the first page of your summary there, last year's results and this year's results. We have about $55.8 million in actuarial accrued liability. That's how much money we need with benefits accrued to date. And we have an actuarial value of assets of $56.4 million. So we are just over 100% funded. The second purpose of the valuation is then to make a recommendation to the city for the upcoming year, a contribution recommendation. And the way that we do that is we look at the top of the second page of your summary, we look at what's called the employer normal cost, which is the benefits that we expect to be earned, excuse me, in the upcoming year. So we look at just our active population, and we look at the value of the benefits that we expect them to earn based on their current level of pay. Then we amortize, excuse me, any unfunded actuarial accrued liability. In this case, for this year, we actually have a negative number there in that second line because we have a bit of we're just over 100% funded. We have a slight negative there. We adjust that for interest. Our recommendation to the city would be to have a contribution of at least $523,352 for the year beginning October 1, 2019, which is about 9.03% of payroll. We actually expect in anticipated collections from property taxes to have about $718,000 for this fiscal year. So the additional recommended contribution to the city, of course, is zero. We expect to bring in more in tax revenue from property taxes than we would recommend as an annual contribution. That is actually what we anticipate in for the foreseeable future. We don't anticipate needing any additional contributions. We expect for the foreseeable future for the property tax revenues to keep pace or be more than the recommended contributions for the upcoming years. I will caution the council, as I caution the board every year, we do this valuation every year for a reason, and that is to take a snapshot view of where we are. We are very sensitive to volatility in our investments, volatility in our demographics. Currently, if everything goes as we anticipate that it will, we should be able to keep pace with property taxes and keep this plan very well funded. Things can change, and as we've seen in past years, I just I always want to bring to the attention that all of our projections are based on actuarial assumptions. The rest of the summary gives you some context to this year's. There's some history there of the recommended contributions. There's a history down at the bottom of the second page of the assets and the liabilities. And we can see where back in 2012, we were 85% funded. Changes were made, and we've seen some nice investment growth since then. So we've gone from being 85.7% funded in 2012 to just over 100% funded for the last few years. On the last page there, you can see the history of annual recommended contributions. And then you can also see what was actually contributed. And you can see down there for last year especially, we contributed, we had 173% of the recommended contribution come in. And we anticipate again that we will have more coming in than what we recommend, which will make the plan better funded even faster. So that is a very fast overview. I'll pause and take it. Yes, sir.
So a quick question on that. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 6 of the last 7 years we've gotten over 100% contribution from, and it's not a popular question, but is there a point where we lower that tax amount to balance it out so that we're not bringing in 173% but closer to 100% of the actual amount?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, my answer was simply going to be that's not a question for
Right.
me.
It's a policy question.
Okay.
So if you get to a certain point where now, the amount that's being brought in isn't, I don't think, the relevant amount. The funded ratio is the sort of the most relevant thing, and you're about 101.1% now.
Right.
If it gets up, I don't know what the right amount would be, but if it got up to a certain level, you might consider it. But just given that things can always change, as Ms. Kristen says, investments, things can go, the market can stop earning what it's making. You never know what's going to, again, the news is good, but you never know what might happen. So you should always be cautious about lowering the property tax rate. But conceivably, the day might come at some day when you decide that it's funded high enough that you would want to think about it.
Chief
Question on your last paragraph here, on the last page about the investment losses. As far as 632,000, was that for this last year then?
Correct. That was on a market value basis. We had an investment loss of $632,000 on a market value basis. So we saw about a 5.37% rate of return on our investments for the year ending 9/30/19, whereas we expect about 6.5%.
Okay.
But the actuarial value of assets that you see on the first page of the summary, we only recognize 20% of an asset gain or loss every year. And so what that does is it doesn't change the cost of the plan at all, but it smooths out the volatility in the market when we roll those gains and losses in at 20% per year over a 5-year period.
Chief Beamer?
Sir, I just want to point out, the funding policy that the council renewed on the 4th of June this year mentions the funding levels and when the committee, the pension board council committee would meet and reconvene. And that is if the funding level drops to 85% or goes as high as 115%. So if those numbers happen at some point on either end, then there would be a committee formed once again to discuss either what to do with the excess or how to make up for the shortfall. And that's something that you adopted earlier this year.
And just to expand on that, I'm looking, you don't have a copy of the full report in front of you, but I brought one with me. That full report includes a 30-year projection looking forward. Again, if all actuarial assumptions are met exactly, we anticipate that we could be potentially at 115% funded in 2024. So it's not something to consider this year, but it's not terribly far off if we keep going as we have been.
Can you compare us to other cities? However, we seem to be in pretty good shape compared to a lot of them.
You are in quite an enviable position, yes. The funded status that this plan has achieved, as well as the commitment of the pension board and the city council to keep the plan well-funded, has this plan very well positioned relative to your peers.
I think another thing that helps, I know I have a lot of friends in the Houston Fire Department, and the courts allowed Houston to use those funds. And now, of course, they're in terrible shape, and some larger cities are just like them. Whereas we took the governing body out of it, including myself, and we have our own committee, and we cannot use those funds for anything other than what they're meant to be. So it can be a problem. So I congratulate the city back when, for formulating the way they did it.
Agreed.
And you may have some more money. I noticed I got my tax bill today, and real estate taxes went up, at least in Clay County.
Anybody else? Okay,
Mayor.
I was going to make a motion.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Move to approve resolution 19081.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
You bet.
Number 12.
Ordinance, escapes, walkaways, failures to return. Bill number 7469, ordinance number 9266.
Eric?
Thanks, sir. I'll call on Chief Beamer.
Thank you, sir. We have an issue that has become a problem here in North Kansas City, not only for our city, but it's something that has become an issue across the region. We arrest someone on an original charge, outstanding warrant, whatever. And it's not uncommon for them to get to jail and suddenly develop an illness. The jail flu, cellitis, whatever you want to call it. Some people are legitimately ill, and I recognize that. But there's a lot that just think that going to the hospital is a better option than staying in jail. And so with our paramedics, we'll call them over. More often than not, these individuals get transported to the emergency room. Sometimes the period needed to assess their illness can be lengthy. Staffing can be an issue where we're not going to be able to babysit that individual. And so we tell them that, we put a hold on them, let us know when they're ready to go, and then they'll just walk out of the hospital. So we do not currently have an escape ordinance on the books. And because of this situation, we believe it's important that if these individuals do walk out or escape from custody, which is the same concept, that there needs to be some type of consequences to that. So we're asking that the council adopt this ordinance tonight. It's modeled after Kansas City's ordinance. It has been reviewed by the city prosecutor, Anthony Bologna. He endorses it. Mr. Barzee has crafted it to make sure that it's compliant with all the necessary language for the city. And that's what we're asking you to do, is adopt this ordinance so that if these people continue to do this stuff, there will be consequences.
Makes sense to me. Okay. Will you call for the motion? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, okay.
First reading. If there's no discussion.
We need the motion in a second.
Is there any discussion?
He just says-
Well, now we're gonna do the discussion afterwards.
After? First reading.
Second.
Now it's discussion.
Okay, now, any discussion?
No discussion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance amending Chapter 9.16 offenses by or against public officers and government of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri by creating a new section 9.16.025 prohibiting escapes and walkaways while in lawful custody.
I move that bill number 7469 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9266.
Second.
Do we need discussion again? Any discussion? Okay, call roll.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart? An ordinance amending Chapter 9.16 Offenses by or against public officers and government of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri by creating a new section 9.16.025 prohibiting escapes and walkaways while in lawful custody.
Number 13.
Extension of time of performance parking lot at East 13th Avenue and Knox Street. Resolution number 19-082.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on the Public Works Director, Pat Hopper.
Thank you. On September 17th, the city entered into a contract with Gunter Construction for the construction of a parking lot at 13th and Knox, which is commonly known as the Rabbit Hole Parking Lot. The contract allowed 80 days for completion. The 80 days will expire on December 13th. Although the work is going good and it's progressing, it's unlikely to be completed by that time, but it is possible. But an amendment extending the time of performance on or about to April 11th, 2020 has been prepared for council approval, and staff recommends approval. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
You want a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Takes a long time to get parking lots developed around here. My only discussion, okay, weather. All right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, did you? Oh, I thought Zach had a question.
I'm just looking.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 14.
Successor Directors, Board of Directors of the North Kansas City Destination Developers Community Improvement District, Resolution number 19-083.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. In October of 2017, the City Council approved a petition to establish the North Kansas City Destination Developers Community Improvement District, CID. The Board of Directors of the district includes 3 members representing North Kansas City Destination Developers and 2 representing the city. Steve Warger, Don Stilo, and Eric Berlin were established as initial directors on the CID Board of Directors. Their terms are expiring. So before you is a resolution proposing a slate of these 3 as successor directors for your consideration. The duties of the CID Board are almost entirely ministerial. We do recommend the reappointment of those directors to you. If you do have any questions, legal counsel for the CID is here, James Bergen of the Polzanelli Law Firm.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 15.
Extension of agreement with North Kansas City Historical Society Caboose Preservation, Resolution number 19-084.
Eric?
Thanks, sir. On May 15th, 2018, the city entered into an agreement with the North Kansas City Historical Society for preservation efforts for the railroad caboose located in Caboose Park. The agreement gave the Historical Society until the end of this year to complete its work on the caboose refurbishment. In November, you received a presentation from Jim Spahn, president of the Historical Society, who asked for a 1-year extension for the time of completion. He indicated that you were amenable. So before you is a first amendment to the agreement for your approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? I might add that James Spahn called me yesterday, and we have to have construction drawings to be able to get a permit to do this, and we have those drawings done now, so we're going to bring those to the city and see if we can get a permit and go forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 16.
License agreement for 1428 Swift, entrance ramp and stairs. Bill number 7471, ordinance number 9268.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on the Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A license agreement gives a third party the city's permission to use our property or right-of-way for something which they would not otherwise be authorized to do. In this case, this license agreement concerns the property on the west side of Swift between 14th and 16th Avenues, sometimes known as the old Hallmark facility. Its address is 1520 Swift. This building comes up to the property line along Swift. There's no additional space on that property for any additional improvements. The owner is in the process of dividing the building up into tenant spaces. And one of the first of those tenant spaces is going to be occupied by a business called Extracts Processing. They're going to be moving into 10,000 square feet inside this building. The tenant space will not extend through the building to the west side. It needs an public entrance and an egress door. And both of these will require stairs and an accessible ramp. And because the building facade's on the property line, the only place to put these is in the city's right-of-way. The tenant and their architect recently met with city staff to discuss the license agreement. We do believe that the tenant has fully explored alternatives to doing this, and that this arrangement is the best option for the reuse of the building. The stairs and the ramp will be located in what is predominantly a grassy area today. Where the ramp encroaches into our existing sidewalk, the tenant will be expanding the sidewalk so that pedestrians may safely pass around it. And they do understand that the license agreement can be terminated by the city in the future with appropriate notice, as outlined. They are here if you have any further questions, but staff would recommend approval of the license agreement to allow them to move forward with their tenant finish.
A motion?
First reading.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance adopting and approving a license agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and 1520 Swift LC regarding real property generally located on the west side of Swift Street between 14th and 16th Avenues in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
I move that bill number 7471 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9268.
No more discussion. Call a roll.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
An ordinance adopting and approving a license agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and 1520 Swift LC regarding real property generally located on the west side of Swift Street between 14th and 16th Avenues in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
Number 17.
Approving accounts due and payable by the city through November 29th, 2019.
First reading. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through November 29th, 2019.
I move that bill number 7472 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9269.
Second.
Call a roll.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through November 29th, 2019.
Mr. Eric.
Thank you, sir. The only staff comment regards the Armor Road Complete Street project. So last meeting, we discussed some changes in front of Richards Park to accommodate deliveries at the Mop Bucket and establish a loading zone there. Those changes have been made, so the changes that we intended there are complete. And then with regard to the post office, our engineer, WSP, provided us plans today, which we will now use to obtain a quote from our contractor so that we can work to get the angled parking that you all indicated you were approving of implemented as soon as we can. That concludes staff comments.
Well, Mr. Farr, you're up.
A couple, three questions. Speaking of parking lots, any idea when the one down off of 18th and
Buchanan?
Buchanan's going to open up?
Last we heard, it sounds like Mr. Barzee knows something. Last we heard, it was supposed to be at the end of November, and that hasn't happened, so.
That's weird. I was downtown Friday night late, and I drove by, and that parking lot was full.
Yeah, there's cars.
I don't know if anyone else saw it, but I happened to just see that.
Maybe it is open. Why?
Oh.
David's got some.
Oh, David, yeah.
Yes, I'm David Harris. I've talked to Mr. Back on Friday, and what they want to do is they wanted to temporarily use, actually it was earlier, like Wednesday of last week, but what they wanted to do was temporarily use the parking lot for an event this weekend. And what they're doing right now is getting their kiosks and their signs up, and they plan to open up on schedule. So it should be permanently opened up by the end of the month or early next.
It's free parking now?
I don't know that.
That's what the kiosk is for, is to, for payment. That's my understanding.
Do we have any idea what they're going to charge, out of curiosity?
No, I don't.
Another question, when, and I don't know if we got any answer to this one, Armor Road down by Quick Trip, the new Quick Trip, any idea when it might be done?
So the street improvements, it's our understanding, or according to MoDOT, should be done by the end of this month. The store itself, later in the spring. But that's what they've told us, and of course, as we point out often to folks, and that isn't our project. David, did you have some more information about that?
Only about the Quick Trip itself. They anticipate opening it up in February.
February. And I don't know if anybody's noticed, but Burger King is closed too.
Yes, we did notice that. According to the sign on their door, the new Burger King should be open for business December 9th.
Correct.
And then, once we have word from them that they've removed everything from the old building, but before we set the demolition contractor to work, we will have our police and fire departments do whatever training they want to do in that building, and then we will set our demolition. You've already awarded the demolition contract, so we'll proceed with demolition of the old building.
What day did they close?
The first.
I believe.
Oh, they did?
They were open yesterday, I think. So, but they weren't open today. So.
That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, first want to congratulate Kevin Fremont on his appointment to Chief of Police. It's been a pleasure getting to know him over the last several years, and I believe he's representing the community well, and will continue to do so in your new role. So congratulations on that. Welcome to the Boy Scouts. I know he hasn't had the most exciting meeting here, but this is where things happen. Then a question for Sarah. 23rd and Swift, that RFP is closed now. Did we get a lot of applications for that?
We got 10 applications. And
10
we
good
are,
applications?
well, we're reviewing them.
We're working on that part now. Perfect, thank you. And then also the week before, attended the National League of Cities Summit. Spent 4 days there attending sessions, roundtables, and meetings about all kinds of issues relating to our issues facing municipalities. The 3 themes I really picked up out of this year was affordable housing, using smart city technologies, and climate change and sustainability. So I think that's really what, people are feeling all around the country. Those are the pressures in the community right now. And that's all I got about that.
I'd also like to congratulate Major Freeman. Look forward to working with you. Loving the leaf pickup. My neighborhood's really happy. They were really working it today. I saw them both in my ward and in your ward. I don't know, they were everywhere today. And I'm not hearing any more complaints about the debris. I explained to people what you explained to us, that it had been a dry season and kind of hosed everybody up. So that's all I have.
Congrats. Everybody, streetscape meeting tomorrow night is at 4 to 6 here. If you haven't heard, there's a Santa at the library right now. So if you don't have anything to do after this, head on down. That's all for me.
Well, I just wanted to say also congratulations to Major Freeman. Glad to have you continue on board, I guess, in a new role. We'll talk about Chief Beamer later. And also reappointment of Wes to the Liquor Control Board, and congratulate him on that. And thank you for his service. And then also very appreciative of the Police and Fire Pension Fund support. support that we have had over the years. I remember several years ago, Chief Beamer and I worked on that project, and it was at the point where it was verging on being underfunded. And I feel like the council's really taken that seriously and understood the importance of that, and that's been nice to see over the past 6 years or so. So that's been great, and that's all I had. Thank you.
I also want to congratulate Chief-elect Freeman. So you know this community, you've worked with us for quite a while, and I'm really glad that you obtained the position, and I think you'll do really well. Piggybacking on questions coming up about development, Old Chicago, do we know when they might open up? Do we have an ETA on them?
We had our weekly meeting with the developer today. Apparently, they had some little hiccup, but we are hearing that they're aiming for a soft opening later this month, they hope. Probably won't have a big grand opening until sometime after that.
After the first of the year, okay. So I wanted to also congratulate on our board reappointments and thank Wes for re-upping on that, and for our people that work on our pension and police and fire department pension. Christmas lights look great out front. I wasn't at the mayor's Christmas tree, but lighting, but they look great. I also attended the National League of Cities Conference out in San Antonio with Bryant. The thing that I picked up on the conference was another one is affordable housing is a crisis throughout the country. That's something that, I know we're working on with some projects here in North Kansas City. A couple of other things as far as, like building relationships between mayor and city council and city administrator, which I'm sure some of our staff would appreciate. So looking forward to maybe applying some of the things that I learned and bringing those forward. Other than that, that's it.
Congratulate Major Freeman on his promotion. It's going to be odd. I've known Steve since day one of his employment. Unfortunately, it makes me old, but older, yeah. And I would like to say, we lost a member of the retirees this last week from the fire department. Ron Gann. He passed away, I guess, Thursday before last, yeah. So, of course, on that retirement, is the way it works. We still have one in its 90s, so that's all I have.
I think the whole evening went pretty well. That's all I got. Thank you. No- All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion?
No, we didn't have
Probably won't
Good
have
one,
much
that was a good one.